Welcome to Elevated Practice, where we interview masters and mavericks within the field of holistic medicine and uncover unconventional stories in the field of health and wellness. I'm your host, Gretchen Badami, and every episode I'll be interviewing clinicians, scholars, entrepreneurs, and educators who share their wisdom and ideas with you. Are you ready to elevate your practice? Let's begin today's episode. I'd like to extend a big thank you to Handcraft Health for sponsoring Elevated Practice and empowering integrative healthcare practitioners to create personalized healthcare packages for their patients. Create a free account today and elevate your practice at www.handcraft.health. And now, on to today's episode. Today, I would like to welcome Dr. Thomas Avery Garran. Dr. Garran has been practicing botanical medicine for over 30 years and is an herbalist, author, educator, scholar, and acupuncturist. Dr. Garran has taught in Asia, Europe, and North America and is a leading expert on Daodi, the special cultivation and processing techniques for herbal medicinal plants. He is the founder of Herb Whisperer and the owner of the East-West School of Herbology, which focuses on education, research, and the production of Chinese herbs in North America. Dr. Garran's PhD research utilized history, genetics, and chemistry to draw conclusions about how to adopt new medicinal plants into the Chinese pharmacopoeia. He spent 16 years living, studying, and farming in China, and has authored books on Chinese and Western herbal medicine, as well as the first comprehensive book in the English language to offer authentic information about how to grow and process Chinese herbs. Dr. Garran currently manages over 40 acres of field and forest, reclaiming the native ecosystem from invasive species through the use of ecological agriculture and developing a botanical sanctuary in an effort to solve current problems with medicinal plant production and soil degradation. Dr. Garran, welcome.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thomas, I've known of your work and your books for some time now, and given recent geopolitical events that have had a major impact for those of us in the U.S. on access to herbs grown in China, you were one of the first people I thought of reaching out to when I desired to learn more. We are eager to hear your thoughts considering the global medicinal herb industry and the future of importing Chinese herbs and the additional considerations to increasing domestic herb cultivation. Can you first take a few minutes to tell our listeners how you became interested in the cultivation of herbal medicinal plants and your studies in Daodi practices in China?
That's a really good question. You know, sometimes in life things happen for a reason. I think they always happen for a reason, perhaps, but you don't always know what those reasons are, and you don't always know how things are going to turn out when you know, walk through one door or another. When I first started studying Chinese medicine, herbal medicine in general, there was a consideration I had to look at agriculture as a potential direction because I had grown up in a place where we had a garden, and fairly recently I'd lost my paternal grandfather, and my paternal grandmother had told me, he was an excellent gardener, by the way, that he had told her that if he had to do it all over again, he would have been a farmer. And I thought, I wonder if that's something I should do, like that thing that he always wanted to do but never did. At the time, I can remember thinking to myself, as I get older, that's going to be harder and harder to do physically. So naturally, I waited until my mid-50s to do that. I ended up in China for a number of reasons. I was already practicing and studying Chinese medicine for a number of years. I wanted to go there to improve my language because I had come to the realization if I really wanted to understand Chinese medicine, I needed to learn the language. And also I was getting ready to start a program at the University of Hawaii, or a graduate program for ethnobot. And I had a lead to talk to some folks there about potential research avenues for field work. So I went for those two primary reasons. I had been to China before. I really wanted to go back, and I would enroll myself in this course and improve my Chinese. 8 months turned into 16 years. And so a lot of things can happen in that period of time, right? I literally stumbled into a teacher who became the person, the main person on my committee, actually probably the person that I spent more time with than my advisor. and her name is Guolan Ping, and she is the author of the textbook that is used throughout China on the ecology of Chinese herbs. She's a scientist. She's an ecologist and an agronomist. So her main thing is how to bring wild species under cultivation and also how to improve cultivation of Chinese herbs. I was invited to this conference and she got up and started speaking and I thought, oh, that is very cool. I'm very interested in that. And after the lecture, she just randomly sat literally right next to me. I don't know why. I don't know how. I've asked her since. She said she has no idea. It's not where she sat before the lecture. She just sat down there. And so I struck up a conversation with her, and that led to an invitation to go down to the school. And one thing led to another. And there I was in this program. What you said in your intro is what I ended up doing. But the original study that I was doing for the PhD was actually an agriculture study. But towards the end of the second summer, there was a massive flood and my entire project sat underwater for almost 2 weeks. So anybody who knows anything about agriculture, plants that normally don't grow in the water don't do so well when they're under the water for 2 weeks.
You had to find a new project.
Yeah, basically. I think 3 plants lived in the entire project. It was brutal. I'll admit I cried.
I mean, your doctoral research is pretty important. That must have been devastating.
That's like 2 years worth of work that just went down the toilet. There was this whole crazy period of trying to figure out what to do. And I ended up doing maybe even my first choice because, as you mentioned in the intro, I've been doing this work on how to use Western herbs in Chinese medicine. And I've been doing that since the beginning, since I was turned on to that work by one of my first teachers, Michael Tierra, who is a main proponent of this work and authored one of the first texts on the subject. So I learned a lot more about agriculture and doing that research in that area, and that was great. But it also gave me this opportunity to do this other thing, which turned out to also be great. And so what should have been a 4-year program turned into a 5-year program. To better answer your question, most graduate students teach or they do some work for their advisor, some kind of research or whatever it is. They didn't want me to teach because it wasn't appropriate to have a foreigner teaching. And so I was sitting in my advisor's office one day with this other woman. My advisor is Huang Luqi, who's the president of the Academy of Chinese Medicine in Beijing. So there was the two of them, and we were trying to figure out what was appropriate for me to do. And this book was sitting on his desk. It had been recently published. And I said, well, why don't I translate that? And they looked at each other. Would anybody care about that in the West? And I was like, oh, yeah, definitely. And so that's how it started. Like, so I took a text that was good and I think we made it better, not just me. I mean, there was other people involved. I asked a lot of questions, which led to some changes in the original material to the translations. The translation's actually almost a second edition. That really opened my eyes to a whole world of information and history and current practices of how to grow and process Chinese herbs. So
Yeah.
it's been quite an adventure.
Because you have this experience that almost no one over here in the US has had of not only seeing the medicine, which many practitioners do go over to China to shadow and practice and study the medicine, but actually with your boots on the ground, watching and learning and growing the herbs, growing the medicinals, learning the farming practices. Can you share with us what special things, I'm sure there were many, but a few of the special considerations that people over here wouldn't necessarily be aware of when talking about needing to grow herbal medicinals at such a large scale that they would be scalable for production and processing and transport globally?
Right. I think the word scale is the key word there. I've talked to a lot of folks who are interested in growing Chinese herbs. In talks I've done, or people have contacted me and said, I'm interested in this. The problem is that scale is critical. There's no place to sell 10 pounds or 50 pounds of something except for directly to practitioners. And frankly, that's a very long road to hoe. That's just it's not a sustainable model. It's been tried several times. It doesn't work. And so the only way that I can see to do that is to grow at scale. When I've talked to distributing companies, for the most part, they can't really deal with anything less than about 500 pounds. And that has a lot to do with regulatory issues because there's a lot of rules and regulations and laws that have to be followed. And you have to have stuff checked for microbiology, you have to have stuff checked for heavy metals. There's a whole long list of things you have to do.
You
And
can't do that with a small 10-pound,
I mean
50
you
small
can, but
10-pound
it's like
bags.
but it's financially silly,
Yeah,
right? And so you can do it as the farm, that's fine. Or you can sell it to a distributor and they have to do it. So obviously you're going to get a different price for your product if you do that, but it has to be done.
yeah,
There's not really a way around that, again, unless you go directly to practitioners. But as a practitioner, and all the years when I have run a pharmacy for my own practice, even when I've had other people in the practice, but I run the pharmacy, you're busy. Very few practitioners are going to go to one guy for 3 herbs
yeah,
and another guy or gal for 6 herbs and then fill in the rest with one of the major companies.
yeah.
That's just not reality, especially when those farms are trying to charge 2 or 3 or 4 times as much money as what they can buy it from one of the major companies. So there's not really an advantage there. So yeah, scale is the thing. And I would talk to these people and they would say, well, I have 50 row feet that I'd like to try. And I'm like, okay, try it. Let me know how that goes. Like that's
Yep.
not anything that I can help you with really. I mean, I can maybe help you to find some seed material, some germplasm to work with, but I don't have the energy for something that small. If I did that, I could easily have a dozen or more people with these little teeny plots that I'm trying to help, and I wouldn't be able to do anything else in my time. I mean, it doesn't take a lot more energy for me to consult with someone who's doing 50 row feet or 500 acres.
And then where would all of those individual pounds of herbs be sent to be tested, to be processed?
Right.
Because there's not only the issue of scale, but then who's gonna process them and test them, and also who's going to confirm that they're grown in the proper way, and this makes me think of your specialty, the Daodi practice of making sure that the herbs are in the right soil, in the right ecosystem to, have them grow with the medicinal properties that we're looking for, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, because that's a whole 'nother issue entirely. Are the herbs that someone is growing in their farm going to have the medicinal properties that we're looking for in our medicine?
Yeah. We have a lot of question marks in that area. But what we do know, the beauty of Daodi is that it gives us a table of contents, if you will, of each species and what they prefer, like optimal growing conditions, or at least the growing conditions in what is considered currently the Daodi location. Daodi is a little bit of a funny thing for people who don't know what it is. It's like terroir. So it's almost exactly the same definition.
Okay.
So my teacher would say it is the combination of genetics, environment, and human interaction. So we can control the genetics if we have access to the material. We can control the human interaction if we know what to do, if we actually know what the methods are. And the environment, the only thing we can really do about the environment is choose the appropriate location. We can't change much else. I mean, we can add water if the plant needs more water through irrigation. But outside of that, we can't change the humidity. We can make some changes to the soil, but minimal. We can lime or something to change pH. That's fine on a home scale, but most farmers don't like to have to do that kind of shift in their soil on a large scale. Some do. Beauty of North America, particularly Eastern North America, from the Mississippi east, is that it is very similar to Eastern, Central, and Eastern part of China.
Okay.
So there's a number of what we call in botany disjunct species. So, for example, in North America, we have 2 species of Panax, the ginseng. We have American ginseng, and then we have this other one called a Panax trifolius. We don't really use; it's very small. All the other ginseng species are in Asia, right? There's a number of things like that. So there's some kind of connection. I mean, there's lots of speculation about what that means, but there is a connection between the two environmentally and ecologically. We can, if we have the list of information. So plant X prefers, you know, X number of frost-free days, X number of hours of sunlight annually, X amount of rainfall annually that comes mostly in this time of the year. And the list goes on. The type of soil. We have that information. We can look at our maps here in North America and go, okay, this area right here is about right. It's as close as we're going to get. And then we can start to investigate further and look at soils and figure out and sort of hone in on one specific area.
Yeah.
So the Daodi offers us this great catalog of information that allows us to focus on a particular area and say, okay, this region or even maybe a smaller area is going to be the best place to grow this herb. Unfortunately, that excludes, at least for most species that we use in Chinese medicine, the western part of the United States. I recently wrote a Substack about this, and someone said, "So I'm in Washington. So are you telling me I can't grow Chinese herbs here?" And I said, "No, I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that while there are some herbs that would probably do very well there, and maybe it's most appropriate to grow them there, I would think of like licorice, astragalus, that
Okay.
would do really well in the arid, dry West. I'm not saying you can't grow Chisandra, but is it going to be the appropriate place? Is it going to flourish? And is the chemistry going to match the chemistry of the pharmacopoeia of China?
Right.
And so that's the missing piece of the puzzle right now. Nobody has really done that in the past. There's very little information about stuff that's grown here and its chemistry. People have grown stuff and said it looks good, it tastes good, it must be good here.
But they're probably not testing it, right?
No, there's been very little testing. There's been a little bit of research. Put a finer point on the West Coast issue. There was a project done on Huangxian, Scutellaria bicalensis. And this person looked at material that was grown in Northern California and compared it to material that was grown in China. And what he found was that there was a significant difference in the chemical profile, where some of the primary chemicals, what we consider the active constituents,
Yeah.
were either much higher or much lower, and weren't definitely we're not in the range with that the pharmacopoeia says is
Right.
appropriate. That calls into question the clinical efficacy of that plant. It still smells good, it still tastes good, and I'm not going to say it's not good medicine, but I'm not sure I'm comfortable saying it's the same medicine.
Right, right. It may be good medicine for treating other things, but also no one has done that research. If
Right,
you want to use it through the Chinese medicine lens in a formula to do a specific thing that you expect Huang Qin to do,
right,
it's not going to be doing that.
right. Or maybe it is, but
Right,
we have no idea.
right.
Huangqin is good for a number of things. Maybe it's even better for some of those things, but it's
Yeah,
not effective at all for these other things. But we have no
right,
idea. You're
right,
guessing.
right.
And that seems inappropriate to me.
So what I hear you saying is that there's a few pieces here. One is that, okay, people can be growing in their small plots of land, but there's no easy way to scale that. And then if there is success, we don't have the infrastructure set up here, whether it's financial or whether it's the actual facilities or whatever, to test these medicinals to be assured that they're going to be doing what we expect them to do, even if we had them grown at scale at this
Well,
point.
there are labs, and I've been involved in this project at North Carolina State University for the last, I think this is our sixth season, and we have quite a few species that we're getting some yield results last year, and we'll have more this year.
Yeah.
And some of that material will be sent to at least one lab for testing before we started the interview. I talked about this group of folks in Appalachia that had started this cooperative. And I had meetings with them and a bunch of other people. But one of the things that I learned from those meetings was that there were so many questions that I couldn't answer. Having run a farm in China and actually having some of our material exported here to the United States and selling it locally there, I realized when I went to a farmer and they said, "So what can I expect about whatever it was, X, Y, or Z?" It didn't matter. All I could say was, "Well, in China, blah, 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 blah." And as soon as you say that, it doesn't matter what the blah, blah, blah is, because in China is not on my farm here. And
Yeah.
the eyes glaze over and people are like, I don't give a darn about what happens in China. I want to know
Mhm.
what's going to happen on my farm.
Yeah.
And pests are different, diseases are different. I couldn't answer those questions.
Yeah.
I couldn't answer about yield. I could say, yeah, it should be around this, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided we needed to do research, actual research.
And based on what you've seen on farms in China where they are growing at scale and they do have the labor and they do have the money, whether it's from the government or private resource, wherever that comes from, they have all of the components. Based on what you've seen, is there any of that that could be replicable here? What would that take? You're involved with some research where people are starting to think about these questions, but the herbal industry in China, at least 60 years where it's been at the large scale that it is now, and what would we even need to do to get some of this started here?
Well, okay. So the herb industry in China is millennia old. So cultivation,
60
however,
years?
yeah, um, yeah. Sorry to burst your bubble on that one, but cultivation, however, is not that old. Cultivation really started about in the 50s. There's
Okay,
been
that's what I was thinking, that's what I was
some
thinking.
herbs that have been cultivated longer. So like dangui has been cultivated for about 1,000 years. And people have been trying to cultivate ginseng since the Tang Dynasty. They even tried to take it down to southern China and grow it there. It didn't work out. But the vast majority of herbs were not cultivated until around the 50s. When that process started, it was sort of a comedy of errors because people didn't really know, and it was typical of the situation there. It's a top down thing. Like, so we're just going to grow them like vegetables, basically. And that didn't
Which I think is what people assume here as well that you can do with yeah.
Right, right. Well, that didn't work out so well, right? And so that's kind of what led to a lot of the research on Daodi, because Daodi is an older concept, but it had nothing to do with cultivation per se.
Mm,
It was really about where did the most clinically effective medicinal plants come from.
okay.
So research into that was like, oh, okay, so here's the conditions. And then later it was like, oh, right, we probably want to also use those genetics, and we need to pay attention to the different practices that people used from the beginning, from the time the plant starts growing and all the way through to the material that goes to the pharmacy.
Yeah.
So the term "powder," which I'm sure you know, and for people who don't know what that is, it's the processing of herbs. And mostly what we think of is like honey fried licorice or wine steamed Romania, things like that. And that's it's like the pharmacy clinical side of powder. But powder technically is from harvest until it's used in the clinic. So powder, there's a whole bit of powder that happens as soon as you pull that root out of the ground or whatever, cut the leaf off, whatever it is. How it's dried, how it's washed or not. Is it dried in the sun? Is it dried in the shade? There's a multitude of different versions of drying and processing herbs from the very beginning. Those practices are critical in order for us to produce plants. That's that third part of that. We found the location, we got the good right genetic material,
Mhm.
and now we need to learn the methods, the practices. Some of them are older cultural practices, some of them are newer modern practices that they've realized like, well, we don't really need to do it that way. We can just do this and that it's still the same. Because some of the older practices maybe weren't necessarily necessary, for lack of a better way to
Mm.
say that.
Let's pause for a moment to extend a big thank you to our sponsor, Handcraft Health. I prescribe a lot of herbal medicine in my practice, and quite frankly, I don't want to spend the overhead keeping hundreds of herbs and supplements on hand. Since the pandemic, I do a lot of telehealth consults and ship patients their prescriptions. Handcraft Health has been my lifesaver. It allows me to have a successful and streamlined practice and saves me money and office space. I am not tech savvy, but the platform is really straightforward for me to write and easy for my patients to pay online and receive their orders at home. It's free for practitioners to open a Handcraft Health account. It's just handcraft.health and only takes a few minutes to sign up. It's one of the easiest choices you'll make to do what you do best. And now, back to our episode. Like what components could we possibly
Right,
utilize
right.
here? What from based on what you learned that has been discovered there, where could we start or what could we feasibly do or replicate? And what is even the timeline for that?
Okay, so what we can learn from what China's doing and been doing is a few things. Obviously, the Daodi practices and the things that go into the production of the material. I think that probably the biggest hurdle that we have is the post-harvest processing. And there's herb farms here in the United States that are growing herbs for the Western herb industry. And for some of the Chinese herbs, they could easily grow them because there's no special processing.
Okay.
It's basic drying, that they're set up to do, they know how to do. There's little or no difference.
Would that be herbs that are maybe flowers or leaves that are just dried? Things that might come to mind might be like chrysanthemum or something like that?
Sure, sure, those are good examples for sure. And there's, like, this whole other bunch of herbs that do require some kind of processing. My idea, and I'm not the first one to have the idea for sure, it's not like I, dream this up by myself, is to have these kind of regional centers, or at least, relatively local. So I bought this property, and one of the reasons I bought this property to do this farm is because it has this large building on it that will allow me to set up a processing
Mhm.
place. And then I can, in theory, talk to a farmer in the area somewhere who's not too far away and contract them to grow something. Okay, put in 5 acres of this. All you need to do is grow it. I'll help you to do that. And then you just need to get the material to me when it's after harvest. You don't have to do anything else. I'll take care of that part. So
Mhm.
they don't even have to be necessarily an herb grower. Or maybe in some cases, there might be something that can be dried a part of the way. There's a difference. Western herbs always come in this, what they call cut and sift. It's like all these little pieces of herbs. But in Chinese medicine, for a number of reasons, it's always whole, larger and slices of roots
Yep.
and bigger pieces, which is actually much better for storage life. But one of the things I learned in the first season that we grew herbs is that I had always just cut up the fresh herb, sliced the fresh herb, and dried it. But they don't do that there. It's again, it varies from herb to herb. But what I found was that this particular herb, Baijiu, Angelica dehurica. So we sliced it and dried it. When it dried, the center sort of shrunk more than the outside. So it created like a little cut. And when I had this, this expert come and look at it, he's like, "What did you do to this?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Smells great, looks great, like, right, right." Like, "Why does it look like this? Tell me what you did." And I explained to him. He's like, "Oh, okay. No, you need to dry that in the sun until it's about 60% dry. I don't remember exactly, but something around that, and then slice it. And then you have a smooth, perfect wafer." And I thought, okay, why does that matter? Ah, here's why it matters. Because when you do that, you actually keep a lot more of that herb has a very specific odor,
Yes.
right? Which personally I find very attractive. I really like that. I don't know why. That one to me just is wonderful.
Yeah.
I sometimes just open the jar to smell it, which some people might think is weird, but anyway,
And the odor is part of how it works. I mean, it's
for sure.
opening up the
Yes,
the
ex-
sinuses. Yep.
exactly. So when you dry it whole, or not completely, but you dry it as much as you can, the point where it still can be sliced with a machine, because no one's doing it really by hand these days, then it will hold more of those aromatics in the root. If you slice it when it's fresh and dry it, you're going to lose more of the aromatics. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? It didn't occur to me.
Because why would you? And that's such a good example of one small, seemingly trivial thing, which, if overlooked, can affect the effectiveness of the herb. And
Absolutely.
are there a million of those small, trivial things when you look at a pharmacopoeia of over 1,000 herbs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them.
Oh,
It's a That was a really interesting. I've been I had been involved in plant medicine for quite a long time, more than a couple of decades or something at the time. And I
right.
thought, how did I not either think of it or already know it. And I realized, well, there's a lot of things I don't know, you know?
If I mean, if anyone is educated to do something like this, you and a handful of other people who have so much history and knowledge and specialization, but even these little things are not something that you would think of because you are not 2,000 years of Chinese herb
I wasn't trained
foragers
in
and
that
cultivators.
specific area, right?
Yeah,
And I'd never done that. I've done other herbs before, but never that
yeah,
herb.
yeah,
And I was never in my training, I was never taught like, oh, let the herb dry whole for some period of time and then slice it. No one had ever said that to me before.
yeah,
And I
yep.
thought like, oh, there's other herbs that I've harvested. I used to, when I was a herb student and young herbalist, just starting to practice stuff, I worked on the side as a professional wildcrafter. So I would travel throughout the western part of the United States down into the desert and various places up into the mountains. And I would get contracts for you need 10 pounds of that, I need 50 pounds of that, I need 100 pounds of that, I need 14 pounds of that, whatever it was. And I would go and harvest these things. So I had significant experience in specifically in this area. And yet this just never occurred to me.
So thinking about this, and as you said, there may be some herbs, maybe ones that are stems and leaves and flowers that don't require a lot of complex processing. Some herbs that maybe, given the right conditions and the right environment, could easily be grown even in a season. Some of these ones that just are perennials that pop up. Given that there are clearly many herbs that need so much more thought and knowledge for processing and maybe even years of time to grow if they're roots, etcetera.
Oh yeah.
What what is the path forward? Okay, so one of the impetus for this conversation, and I've been racking my brain now for months because I love herbs. That's really the area of our medicine that I'm just so passionate about. And I thought, my God, I need to figure this out. We can't necessarily rely on bringing in all of our herbs consistently from China. We have tariffs now. A
Mm,
few years ago, we had COVID, which disrupted trade routes.
yep.
What so will inevitably be things moving forward in the future that will affect either the pricing or even the availability of getting our very powerful medicine from abroad. What do we do? Clearly, we can't grow the entire pharmacopoeia. Do we just decide that we're going to grow a few key herbs and continue to import others? Do we try to replicate the entire industry from China? It sounds like we can't. What do we do?
Well, I would say it's baby steps, first of all. My dear friend, who's no longer with us, Joe Hollis, who you might have heard of, he wrote a list of the nifty 50, they call it, 50 herbs that he thought these are the ones that we should try. And those are the ones that North Carolina State, at their extension program where I'm doing our research near um, Asheville, I'm sorry, Asheville, North Carolina, in the western part of the state. That's where they started. And I think that's a good start. I think it's reasonable that we could do more than that. However, the processing and scale thing. So for example, something as simple as mint. Like there's mint used in Western herbal medicine, there's mint growing all over the place. Great.
I got a whole bunch in my backyard. It's very invasive. It's taking over everything.
Oh yeah. If yeah, don't grow mint if you want to grow anything else.
I have one
um,
area. It's whole mint.
And we have on the property here a native mint, which is the same species as the one we use in Chinese medicine. It's not peppermint, although peppermint has found its way into, I think it's probably what most people get when they order a
Hmm,
guajillo,
hmm.
right? Um, anyway, if you've ever picked mint in your yard to dry for tea or whatever, you've maybe picked a little bundle and you've tied it up and you've hung it in the room. And then when that's dry, you take it down and you realize, like, oh, by the time I pull all the leaves off it, it's actually just this little bit in a jar. Think about how much time and effort that took. Now, imagine you have 10 acres or
Yeah.
100 acres of that. Where are you going to put it to dry? How are you going to manage that? Growing it's one thing. Then there's like this whole other thing that goes along with that. So then once it's dry, where are you going to store it? How are you going to store it? How are you going to transport it? Biology is one of the things that they need to check. Like can't have mold on it, can't have other bacteria stuff on it. How are you going to deal
Yeah.
with that? It's not as simple as just throwing some seeds in the ground and just figuring it's all going to work out for itself. It's actually fairly complicated. So
Yeah.
I think the first thing we need to worry about is to make sure we have enough genetic material. So I've worked on that. There's Currently, it's a little bit challenging because of the way things are going, but we have a good start anyway. There was material here before I brought any material in. There's more material now than there was before. One of the things we're doing in North Carolina is making sure we're producing seed so that we don't have to rely on trying to get seed from China. And scaling up, I think there's a certain amount of investment that's just going to be necessary for several years to get it to the place that we know we can grow enough that someone can actually earn a living. Because you can't expect to earn any money if you're only growing an acre or even 5 acres. It's just not enough. Then the processing bit has to be solved. The tariffs, unfortunately, I was planning on buying some equipment, but I'm holding off on that because there's certain things. I do have a cutter. It's in North Carolina that I purchased and sent to them a couple of years ago, and they've been using it there. But that will come to my place in the future. But there's a whole lot of other equipment that's needed, like a dryer. There's various ways that people dry herbs here, but they're not always very efficient, and they're extremely labor intensive. Where a dryer, you can imagine a huge walk-in freezer with doors or something, and then carts that roll into that. So you put the herbs on those shelves on those carts, you fill it up, you
Yeah.
close the doors, and then you press the buttons and say, like, I want it to be dried to this humidity level or this
Uh-huh.
moisture level
Yeah.
at this temperature.
I can imagine like a food dehydrator, but on a massive
Basically, yes.
scale.
Basically, like a food dry. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The one I'm looking at, I want to say it's 5 meters long. I think it's 4 meters deep, like 12
Yeah.
feet deep. And then I think, maybe 2 or 3 meters tall. So, it's like a big box, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but with, fans and heating elements and, um, and sensors to know. So if you say, like, I want to bring it down to 30% moisture, it'll start to dry it. And then the sensor says, like, okay, you're getting close to that. Stop. Let, let everything settle so that you know what the actual moisture level is inside the plant, not just inside the environment in the dryer. Right. And then, oh, I maybe need to dry a little bit more. And then it's not perfect, but it gets you pretty close. Right. And then that's when maybe further processing takes place. Like I was talking about before with the baijiu,
Yeah.
you might put the whole roots in there, bring it down to 30 or 40, whatever it is, percentage, moisture percentage, then take it out, put it in the slicer, slice it up, and then put it back in. And then that has to be brought down to usually most plants are between 8 and 12% moisture and when they're finished. Right. And that's before any other process.
It's sort of mind-blowing, and you know all about all of this because this has been your area of specialty, but for someone like myself who was just thinking, "Okay, let's figure out how to domestically grow these herbs, and I'm sure we need money, and I'm sure we need some farmers," but
Yeah.
when you think about every piece
There's a lot of pieces.
involved for every herb and all of the technical differences between each herb and what it needs,
Right.
it's a little bit overwhelming.
It is. And here's another thing. Most farms that process herbs in China are growing only one species.
Which can't actually be very good for the soil is my assumption. Am I wrong about that? I mean, isn't
Um,
intercropping and isn't crop rotation sort of what we think we
yes.
need?
Yes, that's a whole nother issue that I'm not sure we have time to get into. But
That'll be another podcast.
yeah, the reason I bring that up is because they're set up to process just that one thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right? At least in the near future, I don't see how that's possible here. I need to be able to set up my place so that it's going to cover as many things as I possibly can.
right. We don't have anyone who's gonna be just growing acres and acres of one
No, no.
herb and make a living off of that.
Right. It would be great if someone said, "Yeah, I can step up and do that. I have some investment money." If someone came to me today or any day and said, "I want to grow this herb. I'm in the right location, but I don't know A, how to get the material, B, like the actual process that I need to go through to farm it, and C, how to actually process it once it's farmed. Could you help me to do that?" I would,
Yeah.
and they say it had, minimum 10 acres or maybe more. I would be like, yeah, great. Let's do it. I'd be happy to help you do that. Obviously, I'm not doing it for free, but that's beside the point. The point is that it'd be thrilling for me to find someone who was willing to do that,
Yeah.
who had the resources and the interest to do that. I have the interest, I have some knowledge, I have lots of good places to go if I don't know the answer for something, either in the Chinese literature or I can just phone a friend. But I don't necessarily have the resources or the,
Right.
physical energy, frankly.
Right.
You
So for all you listeners, if there's anyone out there who has a farm and who wants to do this, and you know what? So this is going to be a good segue to bring full circle. You have a school and you have a farm where you are doing research, you are teaching students. Can we talk a little bit about this because okay, so we're not going to solve this problem in one podcast, but for our listeners and for people who are either herbalists or who are interested in learning more or doing more or somehow being involved, can you speak for just a few minutes about the project that you are undergoing with your farm and with your school and how anyone who might want to learn more or participate in some way can be involved?
First, I'll talk about the school. I took over one of the oldest herb schools in the country a couple of years ago. It has traditionally been a mixed curriculum of Western herbal medicine, Chinese medicine, and Ayurvedic medicine. The Ayurveda's taken a significant backseat because I don't really have any training in that area. And I'm redeveloping the curriculum so that it integrates Western and Chinese medicine. We have two programs. We have a very simple program, relatively simple program for we call the home herbalist course. It's for people who just want to learn a little bit about how to take care of themselves and their family and such. And then we have something called the professional herbalist course, and that is for people who want to be professional herbalists, but who don't necessarily want to go through, for example, Chinese medicine school, what's often called acupuncture school,
Yeah.
which I think is a misnomer because, you know, I don't even practice acupuncture anymore. I practice as an herbalist. I think most of your listeners are Chinese medicine trained folks, right?
Most, yes.
And so most of what I offer at the school is, at least for the Chinese medicine part of it, is probably not going to be anything new. It would be more of a refresher than anything. However, one of the things that I do there that is different than anything you're going to get in any school, except one starting in the autumn, I will start to be teaching as an adjunct professor at the New England School of Acupuncture, which is housed by the Massachusetts College of
Oh,
Pharmacy. I'm going to be starting with teaching the material that I've written about extensively over the last however many years about using Western herbs in Chinese medicine.
oh cool. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the thing that I do at the school that Chinese herbalists would probably be most interested in.
Okay. So
Where
incorporating them into their practice and learning their characteristics
right.
from the vantage point of Chinese medicine diagnostics?
Right.
Okay.
Like how to take those plants and integrate them into Chinese medicine, modify formulas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also about understanding what they are. So when your patients come in and say, yeah, I've been taking XYZ herb that's not part of the Chinese Materia Medica,
Right.
you actually have some idea what that means.
Right, and how often does that happen? Someone's coming in and they're taking 5 different things that they bought at Whole Foods and
Right. Most Chinese medicine practitioners go, okay, like I heard about it on social media or whatever it is. Like they don't have any training in that area for
yeah.
the most part. And so they don't know how to evaluate that in relation to what their diagnostics are and what they want to prescribe from Chinese herb perspective. So I definitely offer that. As far as the farm and the future processing center, that's an ongoing project. We are um, we are in our second season, which is really kind of our first year, only because we took over this land and the forest, as you mentioned in the intro, and some of the grasslands was covered with invasive species. We've removed a lot of the invasive species. That's going to be a project probably for the rest of my life. Um, and we've plowed under the field and we've put about a third under cultivation this year. And hopefully next year we'll keep moving in that direction. So that along with the processing center, probably start that construction on that next year. Folks, if people are interested in learning about that, we will start to have some classes here on growing Chinese herbs. I mean, the place to find information about anything I'm doing is at herb-whisperer.com. Just Google me. I'm not hard to find. Um, that's what I always tell people. Like, I'm like, how do I find you? Like, my name is not very common. You can find me easily, you know?
And your Herb Whisperer website, which you can Google your name or Herb Whisperer, actually has so much information on it. So you sell seeds, some seeds for
Yep.
some of the plants that you grow, which was a very easy process. I ordered some myself from you not too long ago. And then you also have, I noticed recently, some really cool videos for people who maybe are interested in growing some plants and starting, let's say, a backyard or herb garden or something like that.
Yeah.
You have some really nice videos talking about some of these plants and what to look for and how they're growing and how to grow them. So it's a really fun site for people to go to and browse around to learn more.
Got to give a lot of credit to my wife for the videos because she's the videographer, and some of those videos I had not a lot to do with. She's really done a lot of great work there.
Doing a good job. It's fun to go to and
Yeah,
browse around and
cool.
learn.
And then we have something called the herb stand, which is kind of like going on an herb walk, but it's just one plant. So there's two versions of all those. There's like the public facing version, and those are relatively short. They're usually around a minute or so, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then there's a second version for registered students, and those are usually more like 4 to 10 minutes long. So it's much more involved. We have plans to do lots of other stuff, but we're two people,
Yeah.
and we only have so much time. We have 44 acres and a house that was built in 1971. So you can imagine our hands are full. But, we're we are hoping to be able to bring apprentices here at some point in the future. It's also about figuring out housing and all those kind of details. If folks want to come, and if people really feel a calling to this, they can certainly contact me, and maybe there's a way to work something out. They can come
Yeah,
here.
and you're in the area in Massachusetts near the Berkshires, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
I'm in the what they call the hill towns. So it's like
It's a
the
beautiful
foothills of the
area.
Berkshires. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous here. We were marveling at the fireflies. They've just started in the last
Yeah.
several days. We have great wildlife. I've identified more than 60 species of birds here in the last 2 years. So come join me.
So anyone who's interested, go check it out. Contact Thomas. Go to herbwhisperer.com. And then the school is the East West School of Herbology, which can also be found through the Herb Whisperer website. I usually end with a question which I feel like I know the answer here, but I always like to ask my interviewees, what do you do to stay inspired? What do you do to stay healthy? I hear you talking about running this farm, and I'm thinking, geez, you're tilling the soil every day. You're gonna stay physically fit for the rest of your life just managing this farm. But how do you maintain your inspiration and your health, studying this medicine, using the herbs? What things do you do for your own life?
That's a good question. So one thing, I consume some kind of herbs every day. Whatever it is. It depends on the season and what's going on with my body. So I'm always consuming something besides just regular food. We also grow a lot of our food. So as far as health is concerned, I think the appropriate rest and a really good diet are critical. And we both love to cook, my wife and I. So we put a lot of energy into our food.
Yeah.
So not only is the quality of the material very good, but the love that we put into it, I think, is also important. And the time that we spend together doing that and communing in that way. I have my own practice, my own meditation practice, which has been a little bit lacking recently, but I was thrown off by a number of things personally in my life. It had me going on more walks than sitting,
Mm,
which is okay. That's also meditative.
that is a meditation. Yeah.
Yep. And I try not to overdo the farming part as far as like the physical labor is concerned. I'll be 56 in what 8 days.
Oh, happy birthday.
So, yeah, thanks. I try to make sure that I don't overdo it. I've always been sort of active. I've played hockey pretty much my whole life. I like to hike. I used to surf, although surfing is not really something you can do here.
Only when you were in Hawaii, right?
Well, I grew up on Cape Cod, so I surfed
Oh,
there too. I've surfed all over the country, from Maine to Florida, and all throughout California, all the way down into Mexico and Hawaii.
no.
So, um, But so I try to stay active. I try to eat right. I try to rest appropriately. Make sure I get quiet time and spend as little time staring at a screen as possible. That last one's the key.
As soon as we're done here, you're gonna go back out to the dirt and the plants, right?
No, actually, I gotta paint the living room.
Wear a mask, don't inhale all the paint. But you know what? That's all really good advice, and it sounds like you've incorporated into your life all of those things. You're moving your chi, you're staying active, you're consuming the energy of the plants, and
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I didn't really answer I think maybe the key question is how I stay inspired. And I think the reason I didn't answer that is because I'm not sure I have a good answer for that, except to say that um, as someone who loves to learn, I got lucky enough to pick a field where I could never possibly learn it all. And I'm constantly amazed by the importance of the plant kingdom in the entire ecosystem of the planet and how it interacts with every other part of the ecosystem and how dependent we are on the plant kingdom.
yeah,
If without plants, guess what? We got nothing because they breathe in what we breathe out, right? So, and they breathe out what we breathe in. So
yeah,
it's a, it's a very important relationship that we have. And so the more I learn, the more amazed I am by it. And I'm just sort of starstruck every day by it.
mm.
So, um, it's not hard to stay inspired when you look at something and you learn something new every single day.
Oh, thank you for that. That is, you know what? That is a lifelong journey,
Mm,
being inspired and experiencing joy with everything you see each day, right?
yeah, exactly.
In the changing seasons. Thank you. And I mean, hopefully our listeners will take some inspiration from everything you've talked about today and find a way that each of us as practitioners can hopefully somehow be involved or increase uh, our connectivity with this herbal medicine and think more about the trajectory for domestic herb cultivation moving forward in these chaotic times and finding joy with the relationship with the plants.
Yeah, yep. We can do it. We just have to do it. I mean, seriously, we have to stop talking about it. We have to do
Yep,
it. We
yep,
have to have some people with some resources who believe in it to help with that process. I
yep,
think that's a big hurdle, frankly.
yep.
You know.
So,
So anyway, thank you
all right.
so much for having me here,
Thank
Gretchen.
you so much for being here today. I've loved this talk, and I look forward to speaking with you again with lots of other topics that you are knowledgeable on. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to all of our listeners, and we will see you again soon. Take care. That's all for today's episode of Elevated Practice. I'd like to express my gratitude to our guests today and always for sharing their wisdom with all our listeners. I hope you were able to take away some insights, practical knowledge, or inspirational ideas that you can apply right away to elevate your own practice. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about Elevated Practice. If you have an idea for an episode or a recommendation for a guest, please respond in the comments or message me, Gretchen Badami, directly through social media. Thank you, and I can't wait for you to hear our next episode.